Listen carefully. What you are about to learn is not about forgetting someone. It is about reclaiming yourself. Because the hardest person to let go of is not always the one who hurt you. Sometimes it is the one who still lives inside your mind long after they are gone. You know they are no longer good for your peace. You know the connection has changed. You know the reality, and yet somehow your thoughts keep finding their way back. Back to the same memories, back to the same conversations, back to the same unanswered questions, back to the same version of the story that your mind keeps replaying as if one more review will finally create closure. But it never does, because the mind has a strange habit. It becomes loyal to what it repeats, not always to what is healthy, not always to what is true, but to what is familiar. And that familiarity becomes a prison. You wake up thinking about them. You try to focus, and they return. A song plays, a place appears, a memory surfaces, and suddenly your attention is no longer in the present moment. It is standing in an old emotional room, waiting for an answer that may never arrive. This is where many people lose years of their lives, not because someone left, not because someone changed, not because someone stopped choosing them, but because they never stopped choosing the memory. They kept feeding the attachment long after the connection was gone. The Stoics understood something most people still fail to understand. Suffering grows whenever we surrender our peace to what no longer belongs to our control. And modern psychology reveals something equally powerful. The mind does not simply remember. It rehearses, it strengthens, it repeats. And whatever receives your attention repeatedly begins to shape your identity. This is how a person slowly becomes more than a person. They become a symbol, a wound, a question, a mystery, a mirror where you keep searching for your worth. But your worth was never hidden inside someone else's silence, and your healing will never be found inside someone else's explanation. Healing is not forgetting. Healing is not pretending they never mattered. Healing is learning how to stop abandoning yourself in the name of what you miss. It is separating attachment from love, memory from reality, pain from identity. Because your life cannot become a monument dedicated to someone who is no longer walking beside you. They may have mattered. They may have changed you. They may have awakened something profound inside you, but they do not get to own the rest of your story. Today we are going to walk through 10 powerful lessons in detachment, emotional discipline, and Stoic self-mastery. Not so you can erase someone from your mind, but so you can finally stop losing yourself because of them. Lesson 1. Stop feeding the thought loop. Most people believe a thought becomes powerful because it appears. That is not true. A thought becomes powerful because it is fed. A memory arrives, you hear a song, you pass a familiar street, you wake up at 2 a.m., and suddenly they appear in your mind again. Their voice, their face, their smile, the last conversation, the version of them you still miss, the version of yourself you were when they were still there. That first thought is not the problem. The problem begins when you follow it, because the moment you follow it, the mind starts building an entire world around it. Now you are not simply remembering, you are replaying, editing, imagining, negotiating. You begin rewriting conversations, creating new endings, inventing explanations, predicting regrets, hoping for messages, searching for signs. And before you realize it, one thought has become a storm. This is how attachment survives, not because the person remains present, but because your attention keeps resurrecting them inside your mind. Attention is fuel, and whatever you repeatedly fuel becomes stronger. The brain learns through repetition. Every return strengthens the path. Every replay deepens the groove. Every mental visit teaches your nervous system that this story is still important. That is why the memory keeps returning. Not because it is destiny, because it is practice. That is not closure. That is dependency wearing the mask of curiosity. Real healing begins when you stop treating every urge as an instruction. An urge is not a command. It is simply a feeling moving through the body. It rises, it peaks, and if you do not obey it, it eventually fades. This is where your power returns. Not when you stop wanting to check, but when you stop allowing the desire to make decisions for you. Every time you resist the urge, you strengthen something inside yourself. Every time you choose peace over information, You reclaim a piece of your freedom. Every time you refuse to reopen the wound, you teach your mind a new lesson. The lesson is simple. My peace matters more than my curiosity. My future matters more than my attachment. My life matters more than their updates. Eventually the habit weakens. Eventually the urge loses intensity. Eventually their life stops feeling like a place you need to monitor. Their silence stops feeling like a mystery. Their choices stop feeling like a personal attack. Their absence stops becoming daily news inside your mind. And that is when healing accelerates. Not because they changed, not because they returned, not because they finally explained themselves, but because you stopped feeding the attachment that kept them alive inside your head. This is the second lesson. Stop checking what keeps reopening the wound. Because every time you touch the same sharp edge, you should not be surprised when you continue bleeding. Lesson 3. Separate reality from the story. Most suffering does not come from what happened. It comes from the meaning you attach to what happened. Reality is often painful enough on its own. Someone became distant. Someone stopped choosing you. Someone left. Someone changed. Someone failed to love you the way you hoped. That is reality. It hurts. But then the mind begins writing a story around the reality. And the story hurts even more. The story says I was not enough. The story says I was easy to replace. The story says I meant nothing. The story says if I had been better, they would have stayed. The story says nobody will ever love me again. And slowly the event disappears beneath the weight of interpretation. You are no longer grieving what happened. You are grieving the story your wounded mind created about what happened. The mind rarely says, this person left. The mind says, this person left because something is wrong with me. And that is where suffering becomes dangerous. Because now you are no longer mourning a connection. You are questioning your worth. You are putting yourself on trial. You are using one person's decision as evidence against your entire identity. But pain is a terrible judge. Pain wants certainty. Pain wants an explanation. Pain would rather believe a cruel answer than live with uncertainty. That is why so many people accept stories that destroy them. I wasn't enough. I wasn't lovable. I was too much. I ruined everything. These stories feel true because they hurt. But pain is not proof. Pain is only pain. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He reminded himself constantly that events themselves are neutral. It is our judgments about them that create suffering. The event is one thing. Your interpretation is another. Someone leaving is painful. Deciding that their departure defines your value is self-destruction. And most people never notice the difference. They merge reality and interpretation together until they become inseparable. They stop saying, this happened, and start saying, this happened because I am broken. That is the moment the wound becomes an identity. This is why emotional discipline matters. Not because it removes pain, but because it forces you to question the stories pain tells you. Ask yourself honestly, what do I actually know? What am I assuming? What am I adding because I am afraid? What part of this story belongs to reality? And what part belongs to my insecurity? Those questions create space, and space creates freedom, because the truth is often less dramatic than the story. Sometimes people leave because they are confused. Sometimes they leave because they are immature. Sometimes they leave because they are selfish. Sometimes they leave because they are chasing something else. Sometimes they leave because they simply cannot love the way you need to be loved. None of those possibilities automatically mean you were unworthy. But a wounded mind turns every ending into a verdict. It turns rejection into identity. It turns absence into humiliation. It turns disappointment into destiny. And if you never challenge those stories, they begin controlling your future. You enter new relationships expecting abandonment. You enter new opportunities expecting failure. You enter every room carrying an invisible sentence written years ago by someone who is no longer even present. That is why this lesson matters. Separate reality from the story. Reality may hurt, but the story is usually what destroys you. Reality says they left. The story says no one will ever stay. Reality says they changed. The story says you are forgettable. Reality says the relationship ended. The story says you are impossible to love. Can you see the difference? One is an event. The other is an interpretation. One belongs to life. The other belongs to fear. And freedom begins the moment you stop treating fear as truth. Because not every thought deserves belief. Not every emotion deserves authority. Not every wound deserves to become your identity. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is look directly at the story and say, maybe that isn't the truth. Maybe that's just pain talking. That sentence alone can change your life. Because the moment you question the story, you stop being its prisoner. And once you stop being its prisoner, you can finally begin healing from what actually happened instead of endlessly suffering because of what your mind imagined it meant. Lesson 4. Stop waiting for the version of them that never existed. One of the cruelest traps of attachment is that you stop missing the person and start missing the potential. You stop loving who they were. You start loving who you hoped they would become. And that hope becomes a prison stronger than reality itself. Because reality eventually reveals the truth. But potential can survive forever inside imagination. You remember their promises. You remember their good moments. You remember the version of them that appeared during the rare moments when everything felt perfect. And then your mind builds a future around those moments. A future that never actually happened. A future that only existed inside hope. This is why letting go feels impossible. Because you are not grieving reality anymore. You are grieving possibility. You are grieving the future you imagined, the life you planned, the version of them that lived only inside your expectations. And potential is dangerous because it always looks better than reality. Reality has flaws. Potential has none. Reality disappoints. Potential stays perfect forever. Reality reveals character. Potential hides it. This is why so many people remain emotionally attached long after the relationship ends. They are not holding on to who the person actually was. They are holding on to who they believe the person could become. And there is an enormous difference between those two things. The tragedy is that hope can make you ignore evidence. You see the inconsistency but focus on the potential. You see the distance but focus on the possibility. You see the confusion but focus on the fantasy. Again and again, reality presents itself clearly, yet the mind refuses to let go because it is addicted to what could be. This is why some people spend years waiting for a version of someone that never truly existed. They keep believing that one day the person will become emotionally available. One day they will become honest. One day they will become consistent. One day they will finally love properly. One day they will become the person they briefly pretended to be. But life is not built on one day. Life is built on patterns, and patterns reveal truth far more accurately than promises ever will. Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." Yet most people do the opposite. They believe the words, they believe the potential, they believe the fantasy, and they ignore the behavior. That is how attachment survives. Not through reality, through imagination. This is why emotional maturity requires something painful. You must stop falling in love with potential and start respecting evidence. Respect what they repeatedly showed you. Respect how they handled responsibility. Respect how they treated your heart when they had access to it. Respect how they behaved when things became difficult. Because character reveals itself most clearly when circumstances stop being convenient. Anyone can be kind when they want something. Anyone can be loving during perfect moments. Anyone can make promises when there is no cost attached to them. The real question is, who were they consistently? Not occasionally, consistently. That answer matters because your future depends on it. When you finally stop chasing the version of them that only existed inside hope, a strange thing happens. The attachment begins losing its power. Not because the memories disappear, but because reality becomes stronger than fantasy. You stop arguing with what happened. You stop negotiating with the truth. You stop waiting for a miracle that requires them to become a completely different person. And in that acceptance, there is freedom. Painful freedom, but freedom nonetheless. Because the moment you stop loving who they could have been, you finally see who they actually were. And once you see clearly, letting go becomes possible. Lesson 5. Stop looking for your worth in their decision. One of the deepest mistakes people make after losing someone is turning another person's choice into a measurement of their value. They think, if they left, I must not be enough. If they chose someone else, I must not be special. If they stopped loving me, I must not deserve love. And without realizing it, they hand their self-worth to someone who already walked away. This is dangerous because no human being should possess that kind of power over your identity. Your worth cannot be determined by another person's preference. Your worth cannot be measured by another person's emotional capacity. Your worth cannot rise and fall based on who stays and who leaves. Yet that is exactly what attachment tries to convince you of. It whispers, if they had chosen you, then you would finally be valuable. But value does not work that way. A diamond does not become worthless because someone fails to recognize it. A masterpiece does not become ordinary because someone walks past it without looking. And you do not become less because someone lacked the vision, maturity, or capacity to appreciate what you offered. The Stoics understood this principle deeply. They knew that any value placed in external approval becomes unstable, because external approval can disappear overnight. One compliment can become criticism. One promise can become silence. One relationship can become a memory. If your identity depends on those things, your peace will always remain fragile. This is why self-respect must come from within. Not arrogance, not ego, not superiority. Just the quiet understanding that your worth existed before they arrived and will continue after they leave. Their presence did not create your value. Their absence cannot destroy it. Read that again. Their presence did not create your value. Their absence cannot destroy it. The moment you truly understand that, attachment begins to weaken, because you stop needing them to validate what was already true. You stop needing their apology to feel worthy. You stop needing their attention to feel important. You stop needing their return to feel complete. And when that happens, something powerful emerges. Dignity. The kind of dignity that no rejection can take away. The kind of dignity that remains standing even when everything else falls apart. The kind of dignity that says, I may have lost the relationship, but I refuse to lose myself. And that is where true healing begins. And now we arrive at the truth most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. The person was never the real prison. The attachment was. The endless replaying, the waiting, the checking, the hoping, the bargaining, the need for one more answer, one more explanation, one more sign, one more chance. That was the prison. Because every time you abandoned yourself to chase clarity from someone else, you move further away from your own peace. But today something changes. Today you stop waiting for the past to give you permission to live. Today you stop asking someone else's absence to explain your worth. Today you stop building your future around a chapter that has already ended. Because the truth is simple. The strongest people are not the ones who never get hurt. They are the ones who refuse to stay broken. They are the ones who look directly at pain and say, you may have changed me, but you will never define me. They are the ones who stop chasing closure and start creating it. They are the ones who stop asking, why did they leave? And start asking, who am I becoming because they left? That question changes everything, because your future is not waiting for their apology. Your future is not waiting for their return. Your future is not waiting for their regret. Your future is waiting for you to reclaim your attention, waiting for you to reclaim your energy, waiting for you to reclaim your identity, waiting for you to remember who you were before attachment convinced you that another human being was the source of your peace. One day their name will cross your mind and it won't hurt the way it hurts today. One day the memory will arrive and leave without taking your entire day with it. One day you will realize that the person who once occupied your whole inner world has become only a chapter in a much larger story. And on that day you will understand something extraordinary. You did not need them to save you. You only needed to stop abandoning yourself. That is the final lesson. Not every person who enters your life is meant to stay. Not every connection is meant to become forever. Some people arrive to teach. Some arrive to awaken. Some arrive to reveal wounds you never knew existed. And some arrive to teach you the most important lesson of all, how to come back to yourself. So let them become a chapter. Let the lesson remain. Let the attachment go. Let the past rest. And let yourself move forward with the dignity of someone who finally understands that losing another person is painful. But losing yourself is far worse. And from this moment forward, you refuse to lose yourself again. Before you leave, write these 4 words in the comments. I choose myself now. Not for the algorithm, not for me, for you. Because transformation begins the moment you make a decision, and today is that decision. If you're ready to build an iron mind, emotional discipline, and the kind of inner peace that no rejection, betrayal, or absence can ever take away, subscribe to Silent Authority right now and join thousands of men and women who are choosing self-mastery over emotional chaos. We don't teach you how to chase people. We teach you how to become the person who never has to. Remember this, the moment you stop needing what walked away, you become unstoppable. Stay disciplined, stay dangerous, stay sovereign, and remember, your greatest comeback begins the day you finally return to yourself.